Yes. Ow. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see your faces because it's hard to see you up there on the screen sometimes. Okay, welcome to the Calaveras County Water District Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, February 18th. And it's a little after 10 after 1. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And I believe we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands a nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Okay. We don't do roll call here. Gosh, where's my brain at? We don't, right? It doesn't say roll call. I know, it's like, okay, anyhow, item number 1, public comment. Comments limited to 3 minutes per person. This is the time for anything that is not on the agenda. Any public comment here? Oh, we do? Hello?
Michael Castro, Valley Springs. And actually, I think you are slightly agendized on it for, I think it said 3B, but there's nothing in the agenda that tells me what the discussion's actually going to entail. So I have to guess what it will be. But my comment is speaking with community members and the general community's concern with people unable to pay their water bills, that eventually, rather than CCWD filing liens against them, that they're going to transfer the lien process to the county, which is going to eventually, the county has more power than CCWD to cause people to basically get removed from their homes if they want to sell their properties for non-payment of liens and taxes. And I think you're going to cause harm to a segment of the community here in Calaveras County that can't afford that. And I really wish that this board and CCWD in general think really long and hard about how this is going to affect the community. And that's all I'm going to say. Just give it an extra thought on what you guys are doing, because I think you're going to compromise people that truly can't afford to be compromised.
Gotcha.
Okay,
I hear what you're saying.
thank you.
I think what we're talking about today, though, has to do with the letters of delinquency going out and then talking about shut off. So
What it does,
how-
I'm just making a comment overall
Yeah.
to really rethink this process of assigning it to the county, because I think there could be repercussions unintended.
Yeah.
For
You
the
know,
community.
that has been in place for years for all the districts here. And I know at MSD, it worked well, because what it does, at least there, it brought the late delinquent ratepayers to me face to face, so we can come up with a game plan to help them so it doesn't go to the tax collection. So I think it gets to a point where most people will come in, I think, before the lien is really filed. But
good.
I don't know about that here because I don't do it here. But it's, you know, especially in the sewer side, you can't shut them off. In water you can, and then it gets paid. So that's usually what the filing of those tax liens has to do with sewer. But
I'm just
you know,
asking
we
you
just-
to look really
yeah.
closely.
Yeah,
we'll do.
we'll just have to take a look at,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
policy changes and what.
Yeah, well,
that
that's not
entails.
on the policy
Yeah,
change
yeah.
as far as I know.
Right.
Yeah, that's
But-
why I said I didn't have anything to read
Yeah.
on it
Yeah.
today, so.
Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
Making a general comment.
We duly noted. How about that?
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else in the building? Okay. Anybody online have a comment? No? Okay. Thank you for the public comment, Michael. So the next meeting, the next item, approval of minutes for the meeting of December 17th, 2024. Bertha, we good with that?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. So we approve the minutes of December 17th, 2024. All right, new business, item 3A, report on the monthly financial reports for January 2025, and this is pre-audit.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Director Cicada, Director Underhill, thank you very much for this. The numbers you see are for the budget status report for January 2025. This report goes over and looks at both revenues and expenses. We are 7 months through the fiscal year, but I want to caution everybody that 7 months worth of revenues and expenses don't always equal 7 months worth of revenues and expenses, because we pay expenses in arrears and some of the revenues do not always come in line.
Right.
I'm just going to go over some highlights, and then
Okay.
we can go in and dive into deeper items as we go through the report.
Okay.
And to discuss the different line items. Overall revenues are just about 50%, just over 50% for the year. We did get our property tax revenues in January, and it's 55.3% of budget, which is right where you really want to be. You generally get between 54 and 55% of your property tax allocation in the first allocation. The next group comes in April, May, we get the revenues, and then August is supplementals. So we're pretty much on track for our property tax revenues. Our water and sewer rate revenues are a little bit below budget, but we're looking into that. New Hogan Power revenues are a little bit below than anticipated. We talked about that at mid-year. There's been some work done down there at the facility. And remember, New Hogan is based on rainfall, whereas NCPA, the North Fork, that's based on a cost index that increases each quarter. So the NCPA is a little bit more predictable. New Hogan goes up and down depending upon the flow through the power generation plant. We're hoping to see some rebound come this spring. We've had some pretty good rain recently, so maybe that'll help us.
Right.
Delinquent account charges are only like 3.7% of budget. We were hoping to be able to utilize Tyler utility billing in the process to be able to send out late notices, delinquency notices. And Kelly will dive into this a little bit deeper when she talks about Tyler. But the way it's set up currently is 100% of the delinquency goes to the water fund, regardless of whether it's a sewer account only or a combination sewer water. So we're not, and we don't have the ability within there to figure out what's what. So until we get that fixed, which is part of what we're looking at next as we go through the Tyler UB current future state analysis, that should be coming on board, but we probably don't anticipate that working until next fiscal year.
Is there any way we can take a look at what sewer balances are? Because I know that's historically has been the big issue. How much money we owe to sewer, or how much money is owed from sewer,
From
right?
sewer to water.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's getting a little bit better this year. And I'll get into that in just a moment.
Uh-huh.
But this particular one is the fact that if we're going to make charges, the $10 late fee,
Right.
we want to make sure it goes to the proper account.
Okay.
And right now, the Tyler UB system doesn't allow us to do that. It doesn't allow it to
Yeah, I
go to
think
the correct fund.
yeah,
But
I
I
think I
want to
heard you.
clarify, it's,
To the
you
right
can't
fund.
separate it, so any late fees that you issue go all to water for right now. Are we charging late fees?
No,
Okay,
we
so
are sending
No, we're
notices.
not.
to
So
remind-
No, we're
it doesn't,
not. Yeah.
that's what I was
Yeah.
clarifying. I
Yeah.
knew the answer, but I just wanted to make sure, because you're saying that the income goes to the water fund. Have we collected any kind of late fees that went there? No.
No.
So,
And what we're doing is we are still sending out notices, just to
Yeah.
remind people, correct? We're not, okay, I stand correct. Okay. Because the cost associated with mailing. So we don't even send out notices at this point.
one of my notes.
Okay.
Go
So
ahead, Bertha.
do you, because I do have questions on other accounts here on the revenue side. So whenever you're ready,
Okay, remember I look at revenues and operating and non-operating.
Mhm.
Operating are on this first page with a little
Right.
bit of detail to follow. So let's look at operating revenues. So if you have any questions regarding on page 1 or 2,
Yeah, well, okay, you explained the 3.69 on delinquent account charge.
Yeah.
Coming down to W03, the 54610 miscellaneous income. And the source of miscellaneous income, because let's look at that. We're,
You're still on page 1.
mm-hmm. Yeah. 299.66%. That's,
And you know what, let's state the account number there, and
I
I
said
believe
that.
you're
I
looking at
said it. I said
54610. Okay,
54610.
sorry, I missed it.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
that is a payment we received from Aqua JPIA, a good portion of it, for a accident. One of our vehicles was involved in an accident and it was totaled, and JPIA provided us funds as to pay off that vehicle.
And that was vehicle 754. I have my notes. It says,
Yeah,
you know,
no.
P 754 total loss. So I'm
Yes.
assuming vehicle, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's done.
Okay. All right, then I want to come down to grant revenue. Uh, I know we've been going through having positions filled because I'm saying, why don't we have any grant activity?
We have grant activity on the CIP side. This is not for the CIP programs. This is operating. And we are anticipating reimbursement from CalEMA or FEMA for some previous events. So that's coming in on the operating side. If you're thinking about like the grants we got for the West Point
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt Consolidation Project,
Okay.
those come in on under non-operating revenues.
Oh, okay, specific to the, the activity that is being,
Yes, exactly. That activity determines if it's going to be operating or non-operating.
Mhm. Well, then, okay, well, that's,
Can I jump in here on that grant item real quick? So on the state agencies, the $20,007, we received that, correct? That's revenue received. And so the negative on there really means we have $20,007 received, right?
Right,
And
that's
just
over
because it
budget,
wasn't
because we didn't
budgeted,
budget for
yeah.
it. Yeah.
In something like that, is it good to have it as a negative like that? It's probably just what the system is doing, but to me, because remaining balance, if I see negative, it's sometimes I look at it as, oh, we overspent, and I'm wondering if that bothers anybody but me. No worries. I know, but it's still just,
Understood.
yeah. Anyhow, go ahead, Bertha, you got more?
no, that's it.
On page 1, what about other pages?
Other, page 2,
Can I interject here?
okay,
Just this thing, and I know I've said this before, but if you go to the bottom of page 1, under X06, 48130 rental revenue,
mm-hmm,
you can see it's extremely low.
mm-hmm.
The reason for that is these are our cell tower leases, and we
Oh,
have to go through a GASB process at year end to figure out how much revenue we've actually can post to this year. So that's not going to come up until we get through the audit process.
Okay.
That's all.
okay,
I have I want to move on to page 2 when you're ready, Bertha.
yeah,
Or-
I'm ready.
Okay.
Page 2.
So on page 2, that's where you give all your explanations, and I wrote down some notes, and I believe you answered all of them. The reminder notices, they're going out, but we're not doing late fees.
Actually, I was standing corrected. The reminder notices aren't going out,
They are not?
nor not, because we
Okay.
cannot recoup the cost of it mailing out those
Okay.
reminder notices. Thus, we don't incur a cost for.
So I thought we had
What,
talked about that in the
yeah.
whole in a, sorry, in our regular meeting, weren't we supposed to move forward and try it? Why did somebody decide that we're not doing it?
Let me have Kelly.
Okay. Hi, Kelly.
So when we did discuss this, we had talked about moving forward with that portion of the delinquency process, since we were not going to be locking off or shutting off for non-payment. But at least we would kick off that initial part of it. What we're finding is that we obviously have quite a few notices that we're having to send out, and that is at a cost to the district to run the process, and then also have Data Pros, our third-party mailer, process those each month. So that's at a cost. What we were finding when we were going in and actually running the penalty process is that we have 3 different types of accounts. We have water-only accounts, we have water and sewer accounts, and we have sewer-only accounts. And the penalty scenarios that were originally configured within the system apply penalties to all of these accounts, but the revenue that comes in goes to water. Even though it needs to be split between all of these different accounts, there's no differentiation in the system to be able to adequately separate that revenue when it comes in because of the way it's configured. So we kind of had to go back to the drawing board. We're in talks with Tyler right now, and I'll kind of get into this as a part of, as an addendum to the, or a secondary to the update later on, where we are going to kick off a current future state analysis of the UB side configuration. And the first thing that we're doing is we're going to reconfigure those penalty scenarios so that they drop appropriately. And we're immediately going to implement that part of the process, including the notices.
Do you have a time frame of when this might be able to take place? And did you tell the whole board? And maybe I missed that meeting. I missed a couple of meetings.
I
they
believe it's
aware?
been communicated that we had an issue with the way that it was configured, and so we had to pump the brakes on it. But truly, this is something that is one of the biggest priorities for reconfiguration on the UB side. But we need to make sure, obviously, now that Core Financials is up and running, we should be able to adequately configure it so that it does distribute appropriately on the GL. We weren't able to do that before, but it does take a reconfiguration of sorts. And then, like I said, the ability to differentiate between
Yeah,
the
I
type
get
of
that.
account.
Right. but
So
you-
timeline wise, I would say we have a current future state analysis planned with Tyler for sometime in March. We need to secure their resource in order to do that. When that analysis comes back and they're able to tell us, okay, here's the status of the UB side of the system, here's what we recommend. We would like to be able to obviously come back, have that discussion with finance committee and then the board, if necessary, on our plans for rollout. But like I said, one of the biggest priorities, along with a couple of the other processes that we haven't had built on the UB side, one of the main ones is this penalty part of the
So
process.
do you have any idea of how much we're missing out on monthly by not charging those late fees?
I could definitely get you a calculation.
I'm just
yes.
kind of curious because if it's substantial, I think we'd want to get on that. And it sounds like you are. But the other thing is if we want to potentially avoid liens, we don't want current delinquencies to be building so much where we have no other option than to do a tax lien. So let's kind of see where, in fact, we don't have a aging report. And I'd love to see an aging report. You
Okay.
know, I mean, those are pretty important, especially since we're talking about delinquencies.
Sure.
And can you do an aging on sewer, water, and what is
Yeah.
double?
Absolutely.
And really with that, if you had that and you were billing, you could probably figure it out pretty easy within reason what the fee per customer is charged.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
anyhow, I do want to see an aging at least quarterly,
Okay.
because you only bill every other month. So,
Right.
but if you
right.
could bring back one from the most recent, 30, 60, 90 day kind of a
Sure.
thing.
I could do that.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that'll help me wrap my head around kind of where the delinquencies are.
Absolutely.
That would be nice.
My
Sure.
question is, what sort of process or are you thinking about? Because you mentioned the different kinds of accounts that we have,
Mhm.
coming in. How do you identify
Right.
Water
Mhm.
only, sewer only, water and sewer and, you know.
Right.
I
and
think you have 6 different, did you say that?
Well, specifically for this process, for this delinquency process, and just making sure that the penalty itself is assessed in a way that it should be for these different funds. Really what we're looking at is just making sure that we can work with Tyler. The way that the accounts are in the system right now does not necessarily differentiate between the type of
Charge.
rate codes or charges that are associated with each account. It was, when you run this penalty for this billing cycle, when the money comes in, it all goes to water, and it's like, this is not appropriate. We need to be able to do that. So it's working with Tyler to really potentially reconfigure the accounts to be able to, like I said, differentiate between, okay, these accounts here have some sort of code or user defined element in there where we can say, okay, this is
Yeah.
sewer only. So all the revenue coming in off of these penalties need to go into Fund 500, and then water 300. And then if it's a water and sewer, it would be a split.
And so with the, I'm back onto page 1. So with the water sewer sales residential, that's all combined. There's no breakdown on that. It's just one bucket.
In this report.
In this report.
I can provide detail to you.
And well, if you're saying that utility billing can't break out.
No, just for
three.
penalty, just for penalty.
Oh, okay.
Just
Okay.
for penalties. It's a different process.
Gotcha. Okay.
The way
Thank
that
you.
we're configured on the billing side, we can absolutely
Okay.
differentiate. It's just the configuration of the penalty
Okay. That's good to
module
know.
per se.
Perfect.
So it's just penalty.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So the other questions, the third party stuff was written down there.
Yes.
And the vehicle. So on item page 2, item number 44200, you wrote, where is it? The
Backflow
backflow
cert-
certification testing. So I'm wondering, it is at, what is the percentage it's at? I don't want to put, there it
Right.
is, 76%
76,
plus.
yes.
So is there more certifications to do, or that's it?
No, they will do some more come springtime.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if it was
Yeah.
gonna make budget or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And honestly, when you look at the dollar amount too,
Mm-hmm.
the budget,
Not all that much, yeah.
you're talking a difference of $840.
Yeah, yeah. Just wondering, that's all.
Certainly.
I just think that I'm trying to hold you guys to your budget when you make it. Cause I'll bring that up on page 4.
Okay.
So anything on page 2?
Back to the 44500, that's interesting. Repair labor materials is customer driven.
It is because some of that is when you're looking at customer requests to fix things or developer requests that we have to go out and fix them.
On those requests, would that be like, their laterals or anything like that? Do we even do work
We
on
don't do
customer
anything on
laterals?
their
I
side.
think so, yeah.
No,
Okay.
it's all on our side.
Mhm. So they're saying that we're not supplying a product.
No, it varies on the needs.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, again, it's a small budget item when we look at it. And honestly, over the years that I've seen this, you may go years where very little and then it goes back up.
Hmm.
So it fluctuates based on need.
Okay.
And remember, everything in
Done that
green
hill.
is above budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will say it. So we're fixing something for the customer and we're charging them to do it.
No, it could be a lot of these are developer related where we
Oh.
work on our side and build.
On their behalf,
On
so
their
we can
behalf,
charge
yeah.
them for that.
Right. It's sort of like inspections. When we inspect something.
Well,
we
because when
charge
I
them for-
asked, when I ask, so we do work on their laterals, they say, no, we don't do anything on their side. So I'm kind of wondering what kind of service are we providing if it's on our side and they have to pay for it?
And sometimes what you get is a improvement of the service delivery, the lateral to them. Maybe they want to upsize a meter.
Okay.
and-
Upsize meters, maybe that makes sense.
Yes, things like
Okay.
that.
All right, sorry. I know that was
That's
just really
okay.
pilly. I'm just trying to, How you doing over there, Bertha? Page 2, good?
Yeah,
All right. I don't have any questions for page 3. What about you?
well, I wanted to hear something on X30. Transfers in, that's a healthy amount of money.
That's normal, I think.
Oh,
You see our claim summaries.
that 5 million is what you're looking at?
Mhm.
That
Year
is
to date,
money
too.
coming back into the operating funds for debt service from the capital R&R funds. Your board decided to go ahead and we are allocating revenues to pay, we're allocating a certain portion of revenues to go fund our capital R&R program. We also have money in our CIP loans. All of our debt service is paid for in the operating fund. Our CIP loans, the ones we secured.
Mhm.
The debt we have to pay for those,
Oh,
they transfer the money to the operating fund, and then we make the payments out of the operating fund. Now, that may sound convoluted, but for me, it's transparency. If I put the debt service in the CIP loan funds, you wouldn't see it in the budget because we don't budget in those accounts. So that's why we move money.
Yeah, we
into
moved
the
that
and I
around.
think I remember
Yeah.
the explanation. Yeah,
Yes,
okay. Okay,
All right, page 4. So 60005 and 60035, the payouts. My question is, are they all done for the fiscal year or is there
Which
still
one?
more coming? I mean, there's still some money available in, in them, not very much.
I'm sorry,
which,
Director
Sorry, the
Takeda,
payouts, page 4.
page 4, I didn't catch the account number.
Sorry, it is 60005
Yes.
and then 60035. Both of those are the payouts. I
Yeah.
understand what those are for and how they work, but is there any more? We're at 90% and 95. Is there still some payouts to be requested that haven't been given or we don't know yet?
In PTO payouts, no,
Okay.
because those are done on a
In
one-time
December.
basis.
Yeah,
The comp time payouts, yes. If an employee earns comp time, it's basically overtime. You can get paid for it or you bank it as comp
right.
time. Employees get to use that as time off if they want. Let's say they earn time and a half, and then 2 months later, they want to take some time off during the day to go to a doctor's appointment or something. They can use that comp time, or they can request getting paid for that time, comp time. And the comp time payouts are when they request getting paid.
okay.
So
So
that
is
is
there,
that will probably go up as we go through the year.
so do we have a policy that we stick to budget? I mean, to me, it would be like, they know what they have. And if I was running your show, I'd be saying, I want all requests for payouts or at least you might request it, right? And give yourself a number so you can make the budget. And only under special circumstances could somebody say, oh, I forgot to do it and get paid. And just make it so where you can make the budget and not go over.
Sure. Well,
know.
it's, employees have the option. They can either get paid in overtime. So if they choose not comp time payout, it would appear in overtime. Same dollar amount.
Mhm.
Or they can choose to bank it for vacation time or PTO time for time off. So it's really hard to say you can only use X amount of comp time payout when it's really difficult to figure out how much overtime somebody's going to
Okay,
need.
what about
during
the
year.
other, what about the other payout?
Which one? Payouts?
The first one on there, 60005. That's not comp time, is it? That was
No, but
something
that's
else.
PTO time that they look at and they say, okay, I think it's 386 hours is a maximum of
Right.
PTO that you can accumulate. If you kind of know where you're going to be, you request a payout for that time. And
Right,
So
and there's-
this is this will not go up because we've already hit that time frame.
Okay, so we're good on that. So
Yes,
you kind of, how you prepare the budget for this line item, you can look at your account and know what the
It's hard
the
to pick.
aging is on it or whatever. I'm just trying to make it to where you can ask the employee, please let us know if you're thinking of doing X so we can budget accordingly if it's possible.
actually, it is an imprecise science because you never know. Everybody has so much, you can get so much in PTO, but you don't know how much they're going to
And
use for
overtime.
vacation time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a moving target. And you don't know where they stand on where they are currently. You look at historical and you do your best estimate.
Gotcha.
It's not precise.
All right,
Same
no
way
big
with
deal.
overtime.
All right, the next one, retiree health, 60117. Is that, how often do we make payments on there? If this is period 7, we have several more months to go. Is this paid quarterly?
No,
Because we're at
this is-
70%, we should only be at 58, I think.
Right, and these are the payments that are made based on the retiree health, the changes in our retiree health program.
Oh, those that kind of opted out?
Those who opted out, those who opted in,
Oh.
different dollar amounts
Okay.
and so forth.
And then in that case, you wouldn't know who's opting out?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
We try our best to look at historical trends. So if you look at the past in 23, 24, just over $47,000. And this year we budgeted 52,000.
Well, I'm looking at that percentage and stuff and just kind of wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, so same page still, uniform new and uniform launder, 60314 and 60404. They're all over budget, I believe. One is, what is the launder? Is that one
Yeah.
over budget as well?
Let's
And
start
we
with
have, a lot more months to go. So I know we switched laundering companies, uniform companies, but how did this fail so
And their
high
rates are,
without?
and their
knowing?
rates are higher. That's,
I know,
that's
but
the whole
how
point.
how did it not be more anticipated? And we've talked about this before, and I'm just talking,
Sure.
but I think it would be prudent if somehow, and I know you can, if you're contracting with a vendor, that you settle your pricing in the current fiscal year for the next fiscal year, so you don't have this going on. So like right now, you should be negotiating, what is the price for next fiscal year? So you budget appropriately, and this is what it is. That's what that brought up. I know why it's up. I know the rates are high, but I don't know why we couldn't have prevented that a little better. Maybe if the old company failed and stopped doing it, then okay. But for right now, in the negotiation should be happening for
Certainly.
next fiscal year with no
It-
increases.
And that's something I can look at, but I would like to come back to uniforms new.
Okay?
We order new uniforms for employees in the first half of the year.
So is that it then?
It's not going up,
Perfect.
except for maybe a new employee, but for the most part, that's not
Okay.
going up. And when you look at the budget of 22,000, we're only $584 in the
Perfect.
budget. But it's a uniform laundry. We'll look at that. I know we changed vendors and we've had some challenges, but I will find out more and bring it back to you next meeting.
Got it.
Right?
Okay, thank you. Let me see. I just wrote that 60325. What is that? Lab supplies, consumables. We're at 92. Are we done buying for the year? Is that like a chemical almost kind of thing?
They
We'll use
tend to
some
buy
more.
heavy in the beginning. It's not like
Gotcha.
chemicals, but it's something we will need to look at as we move forward. Honestly, when I look at that, maybe we under budgeted when I look at prior years.
Okay,
That's like reagents also for analytical equipment at the treatment facilities. Yeah, so we should be pretty much close to done on that.
who is that out there
David.
listening? I know who it is.
Sorry, this is David.
David. I'm messing with you going, okay, so that's good. 60414. That's gonna be on the next page. So that's it on that page for me, Bertha. Do you have anything you
No.
want to ask? All right, so the next page, 60414 ozone system. What's going on with that? Page 5 of the report.
60414 ozone system.
Yeah,
So so that is what we keep in hand in case we have to do work on any of the ozone systems throughout. So we have one at the Jenny Lind water system and one at the Copper Cove water system. So we did recently have some work completed at the Copper Cove ozone system. So you will see that GL change a little bit there.
Okay, so it's over budget, $4,700.
Yeah, that illustrates that work that had to get done. So we usually have that money in the budget ready to go in case we experience an issue with the ozone system. And this year we did. We had what are called the diffusers replaced and the units cleaned at the copper plant. That's a one-time thing though.
Okay. Like per year or whatever.
Correct, yes. So generally, yeah, so we won't usually, that's a pretty static GL. It doesn't fluctuate a lot. And then some years, knock on wood, we don't have any issues with the ozone system. And then other years we have unexpected issues that take place.
Is that something that you can, when you said it has to be cleaned, I think is what you just said, can you plan on doing that?
Yes,
Or is it only,
absolutely.
okay,
Yeah,
So, and
when we jump in there to clean, and then we know if we notice issues like this year, like I said, the diffusers were failing, so we had to get some of those replaced while we were cleaning. That's what ends up in resulting in the GL overrun. But for the most part, that it's a pretty static line item. There's not, knock on wood, a lot that happens with the ozone units, but those systems are expensive.
How
So
many-
we always have some cash in the GL for that.
how many ozone units do we have?
We have 2 units per site. And then there's,
And
so
each
then
site
there's
has one.
each site has 2 units. Yeah. So, and then there's the associated equipment with those. So there's liquid oxygen. So that's a chemical you'll see in the chemicals GL sometimes is tied to ozone. There'll be air compressors, there'll be piping. The piping is expensive because it has to be stainless steel because ozone's a powerful oxidant. And then we have the 2 at both Copper and Jenny, we have 2 30-foot tall stainless steel ozone towers. And inside of those towers are these diffusers. And that's where the ozone does its magic. It cross flows against the raw water supply when that water's coming into the system. And then we also have analytical equipment in the treatment plant that sniffs or listen or basically detects ozone in the air and will alarm and shut the plant down and trigger our operators to go ahead and get out of the building. And then there's also what are called ozone destruct units. So there's a lot of equipment associated with the ozone systems.
I
each
guess what
site.
I'm nitpicking, whatever you want to call it, when I look at these budgets and I see them off, obviously if it's off in a good way, it's okay. But I'm
Right.
just trying to see if somehow we can tighten each line item better. I know we like to put a little flexibility in there for the total category, total categories, but ultimately in the bottom line, we'd like to stay within budget.
Yeah.
But when I hear that we're going to take from one category, move money to the other one, that's still not really getting in my opinion, getting a good view or analytic opportunity maybe to know how things are running in different categories. So when I bring these up, I mean, it's obvious we need it, right? And so I'm just making
Yeah.
comments to see if we can't. It would be awesome. I know it's impossible, but it'd be awesome to have them dialed in a little bit better. So like in the ozone case, we're putting together a maintenance, a pre-maintenance,
Oh,
geez.
we have a maintenance
Thank
plan for
you.
the ozone systems. Yeah.
Anyhow, so, I'm not questioning your spending. I'm just really trying to note some things that are really over to see if there's something we can't do more or better to tighten in the line items is all.
And understood.
Yeah,
And
gotcha. Got it.
one of the things that I do not do,
Mhm.
and you've noticed this, I don't move money from one account to another just to cover shortages, because I want to be able to compare
Right.
budget to actuals. And
Right.
that's something I've done forever.
Right.
So when I look at this and we're going through the budget process for next year, I'll look at, wow, it was much higher. But Damon was able to say, when I'm looking at this line item, The last year was $3,200, $3,300. And that's more of the cleaning work that needs to be done.
Well,
The delta that happened this year is having to replace the diffusers. Now, can we do a better job of maybe projecting when we're going to need to do that? Because that's not an every year occurrence. We're going to have that discussion.
and the other reason I've said this several times, it's, you know, you don't want to be changing the line items. You want to see where you're high or
Yeah.
low. And if you could say, oh, it was a one-time happening, and then maybe schedule accordingly, knowing it has to be done as a maintenance program. Anyhow, that's why I'm bringing these things up.
And we're
So,
on the same page.
okay. And then, do.
I had a question on 60430.
Go for it.
Claims and damages.
Yeah, I have that one on here
Oh.
too. Go ahead.
Ms. Richards, can you please come to the podium? Kelly is the one that processes our claims. And she'll have a better discussion, a better understanding of why we're over budget, but we do not talk about individual names.
No worries.
Things.
I don't need to know. I'm just again
Do we have
looking
any
at the budget
questions?
versus, you know, it's over budget quite a bit. So did we have 3 claims instead of 1 or 15 instead of 5?
I would say, what I can comment on is that we had some larger claims than I'm sure what was budgeted for.
Well,
Um,
that shows.
Right, as resulting, well, normally the claims that we get are very, small in
Small.
nature.
Yeah,
And we had some larger claims this
And
time around.
And
from
do-
businesses as opposed to residential.
No,
or-
resulting from infrastructure. So we had just some larger payouts that we had to make to,
and do we not want to
Plan.
use, I mean, these, if it's only over budget that much, 8,800 probably wouldn't be worth it. However, we have general liability for these kinds of things, right? And have the insurance make a payment.
right. So we do typically try to handle some stuff internally that are on is on the lower side.
What
So
do you think
anything
is the,
usually
what is
under
our lower
10,000,
side? What is it?
Anything usually under 10,000.
Okay, but
we
if
try
there's
to handle.
5 of them, then what?
Well, let her tell us.
Well,
So usually if there's anything under the $10,000 dollar threshold that is claimed, we will try to handle it internally. Then there is a process for going through JPIA for potential, reimbursement of those claims. But normally the larger claims, anything $10,000 or over, will go through JPIA.
how many do you think we've had of these claims under 10,000 the last 5 years? Well, since you've been here, have you been here 5 years?
I've been here 3 years.
Ooh, okay, so 3
Um,
years.
I did not start doing claims until about 2 years ago. So I would say just in the time that I've done it, we've had very small claims. But we probably have approximately 10 to 12 a year on the smaller end that we'll process internally.
Yeah.
But
So
that,
we've had,
that, and then we can deal with something like that. But
Right.
you're talking about claims over $10,000.
Well, these are claims here that were handled internally, that came through that ended up being under the 10,000 threshold, but they were a little bit larger than what we
normally
see.
do. Well, in 2023, we spent $7,722. And that's what's so nice about these reports. We can see it. And then, in 2024, it's 6,800. So it's quite a jump.
Right.
We only budgeted 5,000. So I'm just, anyhow, that could be something that might go to JPIA at some point. Who knows?
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
we'll leave it
And-
at that.
And we're working very actually closely with JPIA
Okay.
right now to improve the claims process, just so as a side.
Perfect. Thanks,
Okay.
Kelly.
Thanks.
Just to follow up on that,
Mhm.
we do monitor, as Kelly said, we can come back to JPIA towards the end of the year and take a look at everything and see if we want to make claims to JPIA. But then we also need to be cognizant of the fact that the more claims we make,
Right, the more, sure thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying, what is that dollar amount where,
and honestly, it's one of these things that you can keep, try to give an estimate based on historical, but you never know what's going to happen during the year.
Yeah. Generators fuel.
That's your favorite one. Remember?
I
we talked
know.
About that?
And we just filled them all up. I heard that at the
Yeah,
last meeting,
but
so that's good.
If you look at this, there is now a new
I
GL
can
code
see
right
that,
below
yeah.
it for repairs. We separated out, Michael put in the new code. We haven't gone through and pulled out the repair items and put it in that new GL.
Oh, so the,
Next-
Okay,
So
Well-
next go round, you'll see the difference between fuel and repairs.
okay.
gotcha.
And
I
here's
see
the
what you're
point
doing.
that I have about that. Last year, was it just last year or the year before? We practically did 100% replacement of our generators.
Yeah.
Why are we?
Oh, we still have, and Damon, if you're still there,
Yeah, no, yeah, we have a long way to go to replacing all of our generators, quite a long way. A couple years back, we replaced the generator at the Hunter's water treatment plant, and that was a significant cost. But we're always doing work to the generators, and so this GL was blown this year really because of radiators. So, for example, we had to replace the radiator at what's called the raw water pump station in Copperopolis on the stationary generator there. And the radiator alone with its components was 25 grand. So when you add that with 3 other radiator replacements, we're going to blow this GL out of the water. And that was an unanticipated repair, but that's a critical component to keeping the water system operational in Copper. So it had to be done. So
I understand.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think the point that Jeff made is really pointed because it's going to be helpful next year. We pulled out the fuel component because, as you guys, fuel is an exhaustible resource, right? So when we're in the middle of an emergency, we have our crews go out and mechanics do a great job of keeping those generators fueled. But when the power's out, the generators burn that fuel. And so we got to keep, refilling them storm after storm, power fail after power fail. So moving into next year, that will have its own line item. And so we'll be able to track generator repair costs separate from fuel and better refine what's going on there.
Thank you, Damon. We knew all that,
Okay.
but
yeah.
yeah. So
we still have to ask.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm looking at what happened to postage. Are we done for the year?
are you
Sorry,
down? Okay.
60720.
In looking at that, I believe we probably under budgeted, looking at historical.
Do you have any more, Bertha?
No.
So when we,
Just,
go ahead.
no, I'm already on page 6.
I'm on page 8 when you're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, page 6, 60820, other travel costs.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's when you went to Europe the other day.
That is my.
Now I went to Barbados.
Barbados, excuse me.
Director Underhill, that is reimbursement for mileage. We have
Oh,
it separate because there's some people that travel and you need mileage reimbursement. It goes there, not under training, conferences and travel. So we have 2 separate line items, one for attending conferences,
Right,
whether it's registration, hotel, or major travel, like airlines and things like that. Or if somebody's going to a meeting in Sacramento and drives down there,
uh-huh.
that mileage gets reimbursed in other travel costs.
Okay. Mhm. Oh. Okay,
That's it for that page. Do
uh-huh,
you have anything on 7?
no.
Either. So page 8, and, I'm also reading your things. And one of them was 752. Actually, it's not page 8. Let's just go to page 10, unless you have something on 9. I'm trying to get to the, kind of like how you're explaining certain things, I think is what it was. That tells me why you guys went over or under. And you know which one I'm gonna pull up?
Are you on page 10?
I think so. That's what I has in my notes, but let me find it on actual page 10.
Okay.
Cause I have to use my computer at home. So, where is it? and it may not be on this page. Maybe you guys can help me get there.
And what is? do
And
you
it has
remember
to
the
do
item?
with the copier that you just bought.
Oh, that would be under Department 50, I believe, which would be non-departmental. And that would be
I
on,
was looking at your reasons for it being over, and I can
that would be on page 8.
really, okay. So
capital
I did,
equipment.
it said page 8.
There you go.
Notes.
It's in that,
So here it is. Yeah, equipment purchase in Department 50 was not budgeted. The district needed to replace a copier printer that was the end of its lease, and purchasing the copier printer had a lower cost than entering a new lease. I'm not saying you didn't need one, but this is back to that. You had to have known the lease was expiring, so why wasn't it budgeted for? You wouldn't have already kind of shopped to get an idea.
actually, may I interject here?
Yeah, did it
That's
go
on me.
lower?
That is on me because I didn't reach out
No.
to IT and find out when the lease expired on the lease back in the corner.
At least you copped to it. Yeah.
Pardon me?
I said, at least you copped to it. Thank you.
Yeah, and so we did one a year or so ago in the mailroom. And we were looking at that as a lease versus purchase. And the last time we leased one through them, we ended up running it, because the lease is for 5 years. We ended up running that machine 8 or 9 years before we had to replace it.
Yeah.
So it made sense, in my mind, it made sense to go ahead and purchase it the same way as we looked at.
I'm not arguing that. I
No,
think you guys
I-
know
Yeah,
where
I
that
screwed up.
comes in better. It's just, we just need to plan appropriately. It was,
yes.
that's
I've
all
already-
I'm pointing this out for.
I've already reached out to IT, to Dylan, and we're going to meet within either this week or beginning next week. And he's going to talk to each of the departments, looking at all their laptop needs. One of the concerns we have is Windows 10 is going away, and unless your laptop can upgrade to Windows 11, you have to replace it. So Dylan is going through and doing a item by item review of all our laptops out there and desktops. So as far as replacement, he's looking at all their software. So one of Director Cicada's favorite items is software leases. So we're going to be looking at that in detail as well.
Yeah, because those are, what's your total on all that? It's
Yeah.
huge.
It
So,
is. So that's something that we're going to be providing more attention to this coming budget year.
okay.
When will Windows 11 come in?
It's here.
It's,
Well, yeah, you have
Yeah.
to do it. My computer, I'm debating on whether to get a new one because
yeah. Actually, Windows 11 is here. It's just
Yes.
Microsoft will no longer support Windows 10. So if your laptop cannot accept Windows 11, it's not going to be any good anymore. So
Oh.
we're going to have a number of laptop replacements this coming year.
does staff have laptops for when they're out of the office use, or the laptop is their computer here and they take it with them?
It's here and they take them with them.
Perfect.
So we don't, it used to be you had a desktop and a laptop.
Yeah, we
Now
don't need
everything's
that.
just laptop because they're so
Perfect.
powerful now.
And you go through them often too, so you might as well make it just.
Exactly.
All right, so my last comment, sometime, I'm on page 10 now for sure. When you're giving us the reasons as to why a line item is off one way or the other, sometimes you'll say, we'll continue to monitor this account. So what do you mean by that? You're gonna watch it or, and then
No.
do what?
Actually, it is something we look at in preparation of the budget. And one of the things is another agenda item is we've already started the budget process. So as we go through the budget process, we will do a historical view of what did we budget for and what are our expenses? Did we under budget or did
Was it
something
a typo?
change or over budget? Or did something change in our processes or change in the cost of doing business? All those things will be taken into account with the bottom line to be tighten up your budget.
Okay. I kind of wanted to know what your procedures were for monitoring it. And it's like, me looking at some of these things, it would be pretty much like what you just said. Was it a one-time thing that we had to buy, wasn't accounted for, so that's why it went up, so
Sure.
it should stay normal? Or did everything go up all across the board, so we got to continue it going up?
Sure.
Anyhow.
And to follow up is one of the items that Damon, and I'm not picking on Damon, but, and maybe he can chime in here. When we were talking about the generator repairs, that radiator, $25,000 for a radiator. The question that I have moving forward, and he and I've already discussed this, moving forward, where do we stand on the rest of the equipment? And is this something we're going to have to budget for? Do we be proactive and do more cleaning and rotting out of radiators? So these are the things we've already had discussions on. Because unfortunately, in our business, sometimes you cannot predict a breakdown. And things
Yep.
happen. You just have to understand that.
I understand that.
Okay.
So I'm good with those kind of reports. But is there anything we want to talk about? And if you have more, just, you can interrupt me a second, but I pulled up the fund cash balance report and the fund activity and the schedule of class, cash flows. We should probably just quickly make comments on those. Is there
Sure.
anything more on the budget to actual? You, Bertha?
Director Underhill, do you have any more questions on the expenditure side?
Let me see, we are. I'm, on page 12. Are you past that?
Yeah, I'm done with, this type of the report.
Okay,
So,
well, I'm,
but that's what I'm saying. If you have more, go ahead and
Uh-huh.
go.
page 12, we have, why did I say this?
Jeff, isn't like this,
Okay,
just
um,
excuse me just 1 minute, Bertha, isn't this part, with all the explanations for the most part, because we have the beginning where it's more summary and then here it breaks it down with the explanations. Okay.
Exactly.
So we've kind of seen a lot of the stuff, but here's the explanation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, Bertha, go ahead.
okay, one of my questions, of course, each one of the departments has their head. I mean, like Damon and Kelly and what have you. We just made a new department head, right? In
That is correct.
engineering.
In engineering. Kevin
Okay, yeah.
Williams is.
Will Kevin, how thorough will Kevin be trained in all of this?
We've
stuff?
already met.
Oh,
And we've started the outreach program. I met with him last week, going over all the, getting a feel for what he needs, his general ideas. We're working with him. Kylie works with him on his CIP. He's getting significant amount of time and effort because I see it as our job to help educate him.
Oh,
and get him through
absolutely.
this process.
Yeah, okay, I just want reassurance that, we're treating him or, we're awarding or letting him.
Helping him,
Help
guide him,
And
know
we
how to
also
read
have
these
that with-
financials.
with water resources as well. We have a new water resources manager,
Mhm.
which we'll be working with closely as well.
Okay, as I say, that was just one of my notes,
Certainly.
okay? That's it.
Okay.
All right, so we move on to the cash fund balance report. Any comments or anything you want to make on that? Jeff?
Just that we're making, for my comments, we're doing the negative cash balance in the sewer fund got a little bit better
Mhm.
from June. And remember, that fund has been negative since I started in 2008 and you started before me, but it's been negative for many years. And the biggest issue there is we just don't have a huge customer base.
Right.
But we're making inroads. It's getting less.
But we also did that rate study that had
Yes.
a portion of that to fix this.
Yeah, and that's what's going towards this. So yes,
Good.
we anticipate after 3 years of the rate study, the sewer fund will be positive and moving in the right direction. It's already moving in the right direction. It's less negative.
It's less negative. Hey,
And that may
you made a
sound-
payment.
That's great.
Okay, it went, let's look at it this way. The sewer fund went from just under 1.3 negative to just over 1 million negative.
Right.
So
Good.
it got better by 278,000 from June 30th to January 31st.
Okay.
Okay, the
I'm good.
last question I have, while it doesn't have a page, you had the fund activity report as of January 31st. You have
Yes, the cash flows.
the last page.
Yes,
Revenue for the water fund, sewer fund, expenditures, and then the net fund activity.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're saying that in each of those accounts, help me understand, we were over by $1 million.
For that particular point in time,
Right.
because, yeah, you're right. We did this, and the thing that is a little bit deceiving is when you pick a point in time, it's like, okay.
Only
where
there
are
for a
we now?
minute.
And yes, we just received property tax revenues, which boosted that up. If you look at the previous, it wasn't as good. But this month, we're also going to be making debt service payments on our water and sewer loans, CIP loans, which is a significant amount. What was the one I signed today? For 6, and that was on the sewer side, right?
Yeah.
1.4 in the water side. So it's a cash flow. Your cash flow goes up and down.
Goes in and out.
Huh?
It goes in and out.
Yes, it does.
No, I just wanted to clarify that that was the case. And again, you say point in time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, we're on the schedule of cash flow for water projects.
Okay.
And I think, isn't this the one that I would like to see, let's just take the first one, just because it's the first one on the, or under the water one, the Copper Cove Tank B Clear Well. The project budget, 8.6, that's a total project budget, no matter how many years it takes to build, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then the expenses to date, projected balance of what's left over. Expenditures by fiscal year. Cash flow, so in the cash flow, meaning that's what was budgeted for that project.
For this year.
Yep. And oh, funding from the expansion funds and the CIP loan. What would be really cool is to anticipate if we're gonna come within budget. What's the percentage complete of the job?
Understood. In this particular one.
We have it in another spot. I just haven't found it yet.
No, actually,
You know, when
Yeah.
you have a grant and stuff like that, a construction grant, you have to, at least the ones that I've done, you have to, when you request your money, they're asking you what percentage based on money is complete.
okay,
And I'm wondering why we can't do something like that.
well,
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, if we're only at 50% and we only have 2,000 more, how off is that? Meaning that sometimes you pay in advance for the more, you spend more in the beginning than the end. But it would be nice to go, oh man, we may not be making budget, and you start talking about it before you come to us and say, we need more money for a particular line item, is what I'm trying to, you know.
understood. And I believe those things are addressed in the engineering committee when they have a deeper dive into the projects. Because as you look at a project, and we can try to figure out some way to do this, because I know it's been asked by Director Thomas as well.
Yeah, well, I think it should be in the finance meeting. I listened to the engineering because I'm alternate. I don't recall that, but
Well, part of
Oh,
this
you're
is,
lucky. Oh,
part of this is depending upon where you are in the project. Because you may have a 3-year project timeline, where 2 years of it is planning, design, environmental. So you're 2 years into the project, but you're only maybe 40% there, because the rest of it is construction. So what we need to do, and I can work with Kevin on this, is to determine a way to identify where we are within each particular process of the CIP.
well,
Because if
Yeah.
if you just started construction and you're in year 3, we're gonna have to say 100% design is done. Now we're into construction.
yes, and that would be okay.
Yeah,
Right? Because usually we're not even ready for construction until after all the design and all the approved, we have the funding, and it's kind of a separate pot of money. So, and again, this is stuff I like to see.
sure.
I don't want to make work for you folks that it doesn't help anybody else.
We'll
You
have,
know,
I'll work with Kevin to see if we can come up with something
Mhm.
that isn't very time consuming, but is also easy to discern where we are by, in the stages of the project.
And you would think whoever is monitoring that pot of funds for, who's the construction manager or whatever, would want to know that as well.
Well, I'm sure they have an idea where they are within
Right.
the phase of construction. I just don't see it coming across my desk as, okay,
Gotcha.
we're 30% design. We'll get ideas of 90% design, 100% design, and so forth.
But breaking it down, you would have to do that. And,
Yeah,
and
because that,
generally, isn't the construction the largest pot of funds for the
it tends to
project
be the
anyway? You would
largest.
hope so.
Yeah, it's the largest part of funds, and most of our
Of the
projects,
project.
yeah, the projects.
Yeah.
So, and we do identify the funding source within this. And it's just a matter then of getting an idea of where we are, at giving you an estimate of where we are in the process.
Correct. Yeah, we're at 75% or whatever. And when I see that, I'm gonna say, so you only have 2 million left. How are we gonna come into budget? And you guys should already know what's going on.
Yeah,
So maybe we just get an earlier heads up,
certainly. Okay.
All right. And that was my only thing on this, but I do like looking at it and seeing what's where. You have any questions, Bertha, on it?
No, thank you.
And then, the water fund is the same, or the wastewater is the same report.
thing.
I just would like to see that at some point.
Sure.
Just so it kind of comes forefront before we're being asked about money, and then we could chat about it.
Understood. And just as a reminder, at the last board meeting, your board did approve closing out several projects.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, for the AMI on the water side, and on the sewer side, 15076 or 15080, the Copper Cove Lift Station.
Okay.
projects.
Do you have any more questions for them, Bertha?
No.
All right, how about public comment? Gentlemen, ladies? Here we go.
Just your account 60030 for overtime. It's just a broad number. Do you break that down so you can determine if it's field, if it's office, if it's specific departments that are accumulating the overtime?
That portion of the report is broken out by department. In this case, Department 54, Utilities Services Department.
So that's what this amount is for, is just utility services.
Yes, we
Yep.
break this section of the report down by department. So then the next one is general management, board of directors.
Perfect. Okay, I wasn't reading it well. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot to look at and, go back and forth. It gets, Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
As far as the
Michael.
overtime on the board of directors, budget, you'll have to ask these two ladies.
I don't know. I don't know. Any other public comment? Tell us what page you're on if you can.
My spot,
Gotcha.
a lot to digest here.
It is.
So page 5, I guess. And one of my favorite topics, Mike Rogers, Valley Springs, by the way. One of my favorite topics was vehicle equipment, operating expense, and I'm sorry, repairs and so on. And then my question, I guess, is if that number is substantially over budget, but we've been investing in this lease program with a bunch of new vehicles, it seems counterintuitive that our maintenance and repairs would be going up if we've been replacing vehicles with newer vehicles.
Damon?
Yeah,
Good call.
these aren't just on highway vehicles. These are off highway equipment, backhoes, skid steers, excavators, any type of vehicle, quote unquote, is included. The maintenance repair is included in this line item. So it's not just the trucks in the lease program.
And just to follow up on that, that also includes our backhaul equipment, the big trucks that we have. And we have one of those that had to have significant repairs, and that is not part of the lease program.
Sure.
Correct, Damon?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, this is forklifts, vacons, yeah, everything. This is
Right.
all
Okay.
encompassing.
Yeah, then the other thing would just, if our revenues are not tracking our budget and we're below in revenues, I just wonder why chemicals and materials would be so much more. But I think you said that because we pay that in the early part of the year, we inventory that. Is that the idea?
Chemicals don't track, they don't track on like a seasonal scale.
Uh-uh.
So you buy, pallets of coagulant, pallets, and you buy tankers of chlorine, and they last you throughout a
Yep.
duration of the year. So that the percentage of the GL being used up doesn't track with water consumption or production.
Sure. Yep. Makes sense. And did you ask about the postage?
I did, and what was the answer? You're gonna monitor it? Is that what I heard? Okay, that's one he added, yeah. So my question to you, you're working on the budget. What is the procedure to make sure somebody's looking at those things? Because remember, I caught the telephone one. And so perhaps one of these two, you could say, okay, I want you to compare the two previous budgets to the current budget. And if it's lower, ask me, or higher. You know what I'm saying? Just somebody's got to look at it before we get to this point. Did you buy equipment that shouldn't be there, maybe? Yeah.
So we went out and take a look at it.
Well, when you know that some of our board packets are pretty darn expensive, that's why I tell you not to mail them to me. Yeah, but I think you should, put somebody in charge of looking at, yeah, and you guys look at the previous so you can identify something that stands out.
Yeah, and I review everything that kind of gets over budget. I look into the account to see,
All right,
if
but so
anything-
how did you
if
miss that
anything-
one then?
Well, I wasn't here last year, so that might have been one.
Okay, so we have a plan is what I want to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because the telephone was a big one. And this one here is probably going to be a big one as well, which again, ultimately comes up to when I'm asking and pointing out and making these comments, it's like, I really want to keep this as tight as we can. We don't have the extra income. You
We
know?
all do.
Yeah.
Honestly. For many years, I've been accused of being a parsimonious heathen. And that started in my time budget manager for the city of Folsom. And the fire department, police department did not like me.
And they still don't.
No, as my daughter basically says, Dad, you can use all the fancy words you want. Basically, you're just cheap.
Well, I'd rather hear you say, I'm very frugal when it comes to spending other people's money.
I am that way.
It's important.
Do you have more?
No, I just wanted to ask one question. So, water sales fire hydrant, what is that? Is that new installs? or something?
No. We have hydrant meters that we can place, our staff places on a hydrant at the request of a developer or a builder. And they use that water for their construction jobs. Let's say they have some grading and they need to water it down. So they're charged an appropriate amount.
All right, any public comment online? Seeing none.
Okay,
Boy,
before
that-
we go on, I think we should take a break.
You may take a break and we'll move a little faster on.
Okay, I'll be back, you
potentially
guys.
Some of these other So now, we just finished item 3A. Let's go to 3B. Discussion direction regarding policy changes to address delinquencies. Is Michael online? No? Oh, okay. So Michael's gonna be doing that. Hey, Michael.
Hi, sorry that I can't be there in person today.
Worries.
I was in the office early this morning, but we had a meeting in Murphy's and it just didn't make logistical sense for me to head back down there.
No worries.
But I do want to, I've been following along this meeting and appreciate the work of the finance staff and the discussion so far. And so I wanted to kind of introduce this item, and as Mr. Castro pointed out earlier, we didn't have any documents in the agenda packet for this, so we're kind of talking about this at a high level for now, but we do anticipate bringing some policy changes back to the board pretty soon. So we wanted to at least have a discussion item about a couple of specific things. We're not planning to get into the late charges or notices or the tax roll process, some of what was talked about earlier. We did revisit that last year, and so we weren't planning on bringing that back, at least not in the near term. What we do want to do is address a couple of things that have come up in the past and they've been lingering for a little while. And namely, that is kind of large delinquencies, small number of accounts, but larger delinquency amounts. And so the two main things that we want to focus on, at least here initially, is clarifying a clarification in our policy. So right now we have a policy that states that if somebody applies for a new account, for example, and they have other accounts that are delinquent, we hold the process until all of their accounts are current. There's been some confusion about that at times, about whether or not that applies to, if it's an LLC or a business partnership, whether that applies to the individual members of that partnership. And we want to just clarify, the way that we have operated is, yes, it does, but we want to clarify that in policy. So that if there's a member of an LLC that has delinquent accounts, that LLC can't apply for a new account without bringing their other accounts current. The other clarification that we want to make is adding an interest penalty to larger delinquencies. And we still have some work to do to define what exactly we mean by larger, what dollar amount are we targeting? What's the threshold for that? And what would that interest rate be? We still have some work to do and we'll bring that back to the board. But we want to really target larger delinquencies. These are typically commercial accounts, don't necessarily have to be, but we want to incentivize those entities to bring those accounts current. And so that's just sort of a high level overview of a couple of policy. This is going to require, it'll touch a couple of different policies that will have to come back to the board, but we wanted to at least raise it as a discussion item as we're developing those policy changes, raise it as a discussion item for this committee and see if you had any input on that.
For me, I would think you'd want to say, okay, if your account is this dollar amount, whatever that threshold is, then charge an interest rate, because one, if they're only getting charged, if at all right now, $10 a month, and they're having a cash flow issue, they may say, well, it's cheaper to not pay this for only $10 a month fee, and I'll pay something else over here or buy something else over here, because that's not very much. So there's no incentive for them to pay if it's only a $10 fee. And there's no reason why we should be, being the bank for them,
Right.
in essence. Right. And as far as residential go, I mean, I guess there's a lot of legalities here. You've got to figure out, how much you can charge. And, if, you got to do the same for one. If you do it for one, you got to do it for all kind of a thing. And so maybe the key is the dollar amount,
Right.
And if you
Yeah.
are working on, so on that holding accounts, I don't think that's a problem. They need to pay their accounts before you get them another one. Does that work with residential as well? If you have somebody that has a couple rentals, they may not be a business, they might be just a person. Do you do the same thing for them? And I would say if you do it for commercial, you should do it for them. And then,
Yeah. So I think it would apply, it already applies to any individual account holder.
Okay.
And so that's what we just want to clarify how that plays out when it is a partnership,
and then
regardless of
the,
what
yeah.
form that partnership takes.
I think those are things that should definitely be looked at to see what we can do. And then I know you'll do this, but when you do, just make sure it's redlined. So I could see the
Yes,
difference. That's
absolutely.
all.
Yeah, and hopefully that one shouldn't be a significant change. It does require, in addition to the board policy changes, we have to change some procedures. There's some other internal documentation that we'll have to update. But we're not talking about a large number of customers here. It's just the larger delinquencies that we want to make sure, we're not trying to come down hard on anybody necessarily. We want to just make sure that we have the right incentives in place. As you were just discussing, we don't want it to be, we're not a bank, and we don't want it to be
Right.
easy to blow us off when, it puts us in a cash flow position that is not, where we want to be at our own expense. So we want to try to address those, create the right incentives for those larger account holders to remain current.
Perfect. I'm good with it. Bring it on. Bring it here. Whatever. Bertha, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I know that this has, of course, been a problem forever, but I did hear a few years ago, and I know probably Cindy knows this, is that we have people who are playing the system. They know exactly how our procedure goes, and they know how far they can stretch us before, we incur any kind of action. And so I think that that's one of the things that we should, if at all possible, we can take a look at.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll keep in mind as we're drafting this policy. As you guys know, policy drafting is always tricky, even if the policy, the words might not be, amount to much, but every time you change a word in policy, it could have repercussions.
Right.
And so we
right.
just want to make sure we can take all those things into consideration, but also then try to think through all the implications of any
Mhm.
policy changes that we make. So
Mm-hmm.
we're always very deliberate about policy changes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we are all aware of people going through financial hard times. Everybody.
Yeah, and like I said, we're really targeting larger account delinquencies that have been on the books for, that stay on the books for extended periods of time. Not, I wouldn't anticipate this affecting, single family residences, for example.
Okay.
We have a payment plan available for individual, like residential, or anybody who asked for it, right? I think we put that in place a while back. And then, so are we charging a late fee or not? Sounds like we're not, correct?
We're not right now. We're working to
Okay.
get back to that point
Okay.
as soon as we can.
And-
We're also not doing lock-offs right now.
That was my
that's a
next question.
Separate, right?
So now, because if we were charging the current policy of a late fee, which is what, $10 a month? Or can you have that happen? Is it $10 the first 30 days and then I'm wondering if somebody didn't pay for a whole year in this scenario, because there's no lock-offs, how much would they incur in late fees on the current policy? Throw out a number. Just
Is it
$10
$10 a month or $10 a billing cycle? I think it's $10 per billing cycle. So not much. And
$60. So when they owe us
Excuse me.
$3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in here, and it only costs them $60 a year, yeah, and then, and so with Michael, your comment about not doing tax liens, that's how we can get them to pay up. You know, those type of people. Otherwise, it keeps going on and on until we can lock off. And who knows when that's coming back. Was that it, Michael?
Yeah,
There's-
that was
okay.
it, kind of high level discussion of the policy changes we're considering, but we'll be bringing it back with
Okay, well, let's,
red line.
cool. Let's take some public comments. Go for it, Mike.
Mike Rogers, Valley Springs. Thank you, Michael. You know, I agree with all of you that focusing on the large offenders, as you described them, but I recall last year seeing a spreadsheet of delinquent accounts. And Michael, do you have a sense for what percentage those large delinquent amounts are of the total? I mean, are we talking 10% or 50% of that delinquent?
Good question. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know specifically, but if I had to guess, which I probably shouldn't, but I will, I would guess somewhere in between those two numbers. So I don't think it's quite 50%, but I don't think it's as low as 10% either.
And that's why we need that AR aging next meeting.
Right.
Okay, that'll be helpful.
And just to expound on that, which, you know, kind of astounds me, is that we're not making a bigger effort to collect that. And I realize that it's kind of a carrot and stick approach that you have to take. But if I were running a business and I had these outstanding accounts, particularly these large dollar amounts, I wouldn't worry about which accounting bucket that the revenues need to flow to. I mean, you can take a spreadsheet and you can easily take those top 20 or 30 and say, this is water, this is sewer, this is combined, and do it off, you know, off
Collect
the,
it.
you know, maybe Tyler can't do it, but come on.
We can-
Somebody can sit down with a spreadsheet and figure out how to allocate this. And then once you do it on a spreadsheet, you allocate the funds accordingly to the various departments. This is not, you know, we're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of accounts. We're talking about what, maybe 50 accounts. I mean, we need to collect this money.
Yes.
You know, we can't, I mean, this is not fair to the people that pay their bill every 2 months on time. That these people are, I think the term scofflaw was used earlier by someone in this room. I mean, this is unacceptable. We need to be paid. And
So-
for whatever the incentive or stick or carrot, the other thing is you send out a bill every 2 months. Can't we put something, a document, a late notice inside the bill, or have it printed right on the statement? Your account is 30 days. I mean, my credit card company does that all the time if I'm late. So we shouldn't have to spend a lot of extra postage to send out a late notice. Just put it in the bill. You're late. You're subject to this, this, and this.
Yep.
You need to be
Yeah.
paid.
And the
Thank-
collecting, to me, especially if we have these large accounts, that should be forefront, just like you were saying, you know, and, you know, I hate to put extra work on somebody, but
No, I appreciate
Right.
that. And I understand the frustration. I think that's what we're working on. We're trying to do it as efficiently as possible so it doesn't, you know, increase cost or take up a lot of bandwidth, but we also want to prioritize, you know, collection here in the most efficient way possible. So that's exactly the effort we're working on
So-
right now.
yeah. So at the next meeting, we're going to have that AR aging. So we're going to be able to have a dollar number of what's past due that we're looking. I want to see that number, because when I see that number, you know, we all might go, holy cow, we need
It's-
to get
yeah,
on
it
this
is.
now.
It is
now.
kind of, and it's gone up a lot over, you know, the last couple of years, I think. And it is kind of troubling. I think, you know, without late penalties and without lockoffs, we do still collect. I don't want people to get the wrong impression that we're not collecting. We do still collect. That's why that teeter plan, you know, the tax roll process is so effective for us. You know, we're not having to spend a lot of money on collections, but we do still recover. And so we're fortunate in that sense. But what we really want to target here is, the larger delinquencies that are delinquent for a longer period of time. We shouldn't have to wait to go to the tax roll to create the right incentives for those customers to bring their accounts current.
Yeah. And, is it hard to get an aging report? 30, 60, over 90? Can we have that at every meeting? Because, and it could just be condensed, right? We don't need to see all these pages, bring it the last page of the total. Because I know I'm going to be looking at that and I'm going to be saying something. Shoot, we have, $100,000 of people over 90 days. Somebody better get on that. So, and what happens, because I know you guys are working on it, but if it's not in front of us,
Yeah.
we won't ask you to update us or what's going on. So that, talking about it, every few months, I don't think is good. I think we should be looking at that every month for a while and then see how it goes. As long as it's something you can print easy enough. I'd like to see that monthly. Okay. And keep a closer eye on that. All right. Is there anybody else online that wants to make a comment? No. Okay. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for your comments.
Yeah, thank you all. We'll be bringing a red line back to you soon.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're moving on to item 3C. Discussion and direction regarding amending certain financing agreements relating to the district's outstanding long-term indebtedness. Jeffrey.
Yes, ma'am.
Debt.
As we're getting late in a lot of this, do you want me to go into great detail, summarize, or?
I would do a quick summary. I read what I could of it. I got your agenda page. It makes sense with what you're trying to do.
Sir,
We could maybe directly go to, you looked at it, I know. Is
Mhm.
there any questions? And do you folks have any questions? It seems like a pretty standard
yeah,
thing to do.
and maybe I
So-
can just do a 2-minute overview.
2 minute.
There we go. As you're aware, this fiscal year, we created a new hydropower fund
Yes.
so we can record and identify our hydropower activities, FERC license renewals and so forth. In doing that, because we wanted to separate that out, we had to go back to our previous loan agreements, because in those loan agreements, we pledged all water and sewer revenues. Well, the hydro were part of the water and sewer revenues. So we need to extract those and renegotiate terms with all the lenders. And we had the 5 items that you're in front of you. So what we did is we've enlisted the assistance of Cameron Wiest of Wiest Law Firm to do this. He's reached out to the lenders, given them an idea of what we need to do to be able to pull that out and to prove to them that it does not have an adverse effect on our ability to pay debt service on these loans. What they need from your board is to you approve the content of the amendments which were attached to this. And then he can go out, secure their approval, sign all the documents, and then we're authorizing I believe it's Michael, to be able to sign for these agreements. So that in a nutshell is what you're doing. Basically, it's pulling out the hydro revenues from the water and sewer portion and allowing that to be memorialized into
Right.
Contract agreements amendment.
Do you know at this point if any of the agreements, any lenders or anything are going, oh, I'm not sure about this? Or is this the only thing they're asking us to do and it's going to be good?
Well, through Cameron's initial conversations, he's talked to them, talked about debt service coverage ratio and everything. They're pretty much okay with it, but they want to see the final form before they sign off.
Okay.
And that's.
So we don't
final form is gonna be
anticipate
very-
any
Yeah.
issue. Okay.
Yeah,
I am good. What
Yeah.
about you?
And I have high regards for Cameron,
we all do.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
All right.
I personally do. also.
Yes, ma'am. You've had a,
No.
yeah,
Wonderful working relationship and his thoroughness, and his eye on the ball and anticipating any problems that could possibly arise. He's got it covered. Cool.
well, just to let you know, Cameron started working with the district before I came on in 2008. And that's where Director Underhill had her initial interaction with him.
Mhm, mhm.
All right, we're gonna move on. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. Any public comment, gentlemen? Anybody online, public comment? Okay, so you need from us to move it forward to the board?
Yes.
Okay,
With the
I'm okay
recommendation
with
the
that.
Board
Yeah.
approving as is.
All right, you've got our
Mhm.
blessing.
Thank you, ma'am.
All righty, and that was a big one there.
Okay.
All right, item 3D, discussion direction regarding the PFM investment policy statement for the district's other post-employment benefits trust. Jeffrey?
Okay, my first question to everyone here, sitting on the dais. Did you read the investment policy statement?
No,
Then, trust me, I
I
did.
read the, yeah, I know, I read the,
I read it, I worked with Andrew Brown. You met Andrew. He
I-
was here when PFM did his presentation last fall.
and I did one of these before, and a lot of it's canned writing and
Oh,
most of
yeah.
these things, but I do read, I make sure I read your agenda item stuff first, because that
Thanks.
summarizes it for me better.
Actually,
And I do
if you
peruse,
have
but
insomnia, things like legal documents and these are perfect.
yes.
Basically, what it does is
Am I?
it outlines the process for PFM performing our investments, managing our trust fund, managing our funds. It is different than what we set as a target for our investment strategy. This is something completely different. It is something PFM requires. I met with Andrew. We went over things. We deleted some odd items, changed some items. And this is something that, once your board approves it, Michael will sign off on it, and then we're all set. And then we meet their regulatory requirement.
Yes, because as I was reading, I was, we have a title for you in that position, right?
Well, there's the administrator,
Mm-hmm.
but in the
But that's-
documents associated with our account with PFM and with US Bank, who's the trustee, the general manager is identified as the administrator.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be Michael who will be signing these documents.
Mm-hmm. But you are doing the,
But you still need board approval for him. to
Yeah.
sign.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I'm kind of managing the process.
uh-huh. Okay.
And so, yes. But Michael has reviewed this and seen this along with the previous agenda item as well.
I'm good.
Any public comment, Michael and Mike?
What, homework?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I turn the page and look, but sometimes it's so canned. Yep. Okay, any online public comments? Seeing none, moving on. 3E, and there's no paperwork, fiscal year 2024-25 budget update.
Yes, ma'am. As you remember, last month, we had the mid-year budget discussion, budget review, and it kicked off the fiscal year 25-26 budget process. Yesterday, I emailed out budget instructions along with detailed budget item worksheets, any capital improvement requests, and not capital improvement requests, but capital outlay requests and personnel requests, which is our standard packet. They go to the department heads. We've got it all laid out. They are due to turn in their budget packets to back to admin services finance by March 21st. Prior to that, I mean, during that time frame, HR and finance, Stacy, Kelly, and myself will be preparing the salary and benefit numbers to be included in the budget. And then once they are in place, between March 24th and April 11th, finance will be reviewing those budget requests, reaching out to departments for more clarification. And then after that, the GM and finance will sit down with the departments to review it between April 14th and May 2nd. We will take a slight break at that particular point in time to pull everything together. And then we're going to bring the preliminary budget to your committee on Tuesday, May 20th, with a projected budget adoption on June 11th, 2025.
Sure doesn't give you much leeway, does it? If we have
No.
to kick it back to you.
No, you have about a month, or the departments have. a
Well, you
month.
want it in, May 20th.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
finance you're giving it to, May 20th?
May 20th, yeah.
And then you'll have to the full board for review
and then
Like what,
adoption on the 11th.
30th or so,
Right, yes.
and you want it approved in
On the
June.
11th.
Yeah, that's not a whole lot of time. I want to make sure I get those screen sheets from you. Even if they don't have full totals,
Mhm.
I would like to have one just so I could start seeing some of your line items, whether they're getting pulled or not. I can kind of stay with you as you guys are going through the process.
Mhm.
I'll be quiet.
Understood.
I'd like to see and be kind of not fun, but you know, I get it and there's not a whole lot there. And the next month or next time I get it and there's a little bit more, it would be interesting to see. It will help me see your guys' thought processes on some of the stuff.
Certainly. And I've already had initial discussions with the departments,
Mhm.
talking and finding out what their needs are, their larger term needs. I know Damon's already working on his line items. And so we're trying to, the goal here is to get as much work done upfront. Now, one of the reasons why we do, kind of pushed out some of this process is your board has to approve the 5-year CIP program because that sets the CIP for next year.
Yeah.
And when we set that CIP for next year, then we know how much staffing support we're going to need for each of the projects, because each department has to identify who's going to be working on it and number of hours per
Yeah.
project, so we can get that.
Here is one of the, I mean, we have to operate on what revenue we're expecting. So I would definitely make sure you guys have your ducks in a row and explaining, how the rate study has affected the income
Mhm.
and like where it's gone and how it's going. Just be prepared because we as a board need to have that. Want to see how we're doing. We have to
Mhm.
determine if it's going to go up the next year. So I would say out of all the things that we've heard from myself and other board members, public, be able to answer those questions.
Certainly, and as I mentioned in the mid-year report, we are going to use a comparison
Saw that.
between the proposed budget and the rate study. So there'll be that direct comparison both on the operating budget and the CIP budget.
So when you mean by so what you put in the rate study proposal, you're going to be able to dial that back into what we actually did,
What-
put 2 and 2 together kind of a thing. To see
Well,
where things went?
one of the things I was going to be looking at is for fiscal year 25-26, the rate studies estimated we'd be paying this much for all these different line items, salaries and benefits, services and supplies, CIP. I was going to go ahead and then align the rate study model to what we're proposing.
Those line items from the
Yes.
rate, perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and some of the items they do don't drill down into the detail we have. It's
Show us where it goes.
But we'll be able to show them.
Okay, because you're going to be asked. and
Yes, ma'am,
that
and
would
I
be
expect to
great.
be.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that'll be the
Mm-hmm.
toughest part of your whole budget.
It's actually, yeah, it's kind of a litmus test of where we stand.
Exactly. And we all need to know because
Yeah.
we just do.
And honestly, we really didn't get to a point where we can do this analysis until this next budget
Right.
year. So yes, we will be looking at that.
Oh,
Perfect.
right, because,
Yeah. And unfortunately, I understand one of us won't be part of that process.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I'm so sorry. She'd probably go,
but I
"My
will,
goodness."
I will email my approval.
you
Well,
know,
honestly, we've already created one new general ledger account in your honor. Because I know you love new accounts and new departments. That's the generator repairs.
all right, so
Oh, thanks. The
So,
Bertha, the
what-
Bertha fund, the
Bertha
Bertha
deal.
fund.
what I'd like to recommend, so when we go over this revenue portion of this proposed budget, that's when we're going to see it on May 20th.
Well, I
Or
will be
before.
giving, you'll see the proposed, the preliminary budget on May 20th. I will be coming back and giving you
Okay, so-
updates, but I won't know, honestly, to look at the budget in totality, it won't be until that.
Okay, so here's what I wanted to say then is when you're going to do the discussion on the revenue side, the line items and everything that we did, I would recommend that be one item on our finance meeting. And that's kind of it, because I think that we should spend a lot of time on that. And I think we will. So one item and it'll still be a 3-hour meeting probably. That's where I was trying to go. Whenever you're going to do that presentation of comparing rate study line items to your proposal, that should be the only thing on the agenda.
We'll give it our best shot because we do have a lot of items to go over. And I
Then
don't
we
know the
should make it
timing
a
just
special
yet.
meeting with all of us,
That's a
maybe.
possibility.
Maybe it should be a special meeting for that portion with all board members, not just a finance meeting, and give the public time to really ask about those line items.
We can have
We'll
that
talk to
discussion
Michael.
with the board.
Yeah. Okay. That was it?
That's it.
That was nothing.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. All right, item 3F, Tyler implementation update, and that'd be Kelly. Hi again.
So I did just want to provide an update on where we are with the ERP Pro Financials implementation project. And I am happy to report that by all intents and purposes for Tyler's process, our core financials and HR/payroll modules are live, considered live at this point. So that includes core financials, purchasing, fixed assets, and project accounting for the core financial side. And I will get into a little bit more detail here. Personnel management and employee self-service for the payroll side. So when we went through and did the implementation for core financials, as you may recall, we kicked that off first and went ahead and did that in a block implementation, a very rapid implementation by all of our standards. And we've gone through, many of us have gone through several implementations in the past. So it was kind of a different format than what we were used to. I can tell you from the core financial side, even though we are considered live, we are still acclimating to the system. We are still going in and looking at the way that it's configured, making sure that we're trying to optimize it as much as possible. That involves all of finance staff still meeting every week to discuss what's working and what isn't working, and going back with Tyler and engaging their support to see if there's anything else that we can dial in or reconfigure. Some of these things involved the data coming over from our legacy system. And in one of those elements, specifically project accounting, they did not have a mechanism for us to bring that data over. So that has been largely manual data entry for all of our open projects, in which we have many. So there is still that element of being live in the system, but not realizing yet the full potential, and again, optimization of that part of the system. So we continue to meet, have those discussions. Another element that we're trying to explore and figure out how to manipulate so that it can benefit us is the reporting side of it. Tyler does provide you with reports, but in some cases, it does not actually give you exactly what you need without having to run several reports and then piecemeal it together. And we've had to do that in the past, even on the UB side. And when we went through our rate study, we had to pull several different reports and kind of compile the data together. And really what we're trying to do is just be able to pull individual reports for certain processes that we run so that all of the data is included in a singular report. And I think not only does that create operational efficiency, but I think it's a lot cleaner for the auditors as well. So we're still working on that. We're meeting, we're going to be talking about what it is that we're looking for as far as reporting is concerned, and reaching out to Tyler to assist us in building these queries essentially in the system so that we can get what we need on the finance side.
Is that an extra cost to us every time?
No, the support element, there are certain things that we can go through support on, and report building is one of them. I think if we're looking for something more complex that might fall outside of a regular query build, I'm sure Tyler would come back and let us know that it would involve additional
Can you give me an
costs.
idea of what a complex report would be?
Probably something where they're pulling elements from different modules to try to compile it all
Give me an
together.
idea. You have any idea?
Oh, like if we, I don't know, We were pulling a bunch of data out of the GL backend, and we needed to also pull a reporting of data out of the UB front end. We're pulling from two different modules and compiling everything together.
And the front end is the billing and the general
Billing,
ledger is the ones
customer.
storing all the transactions.
Right, some of those transactions on the front. If we are to reach out to Tyler and say, hey, here's, 5 or 6 data elements that we're looking to just have solely reflected in a singular report. It's been my experience that Tyler has been responsive and, assisting with us into the computer and showing us how to do that. They can be complex, from where you're pulling from, but their support capabilities have allowed for us to be able to do that in the past.
How is their budget preparation reports? Because they have a, budget for data entry. When you're preparing it, how are those? Are they good? Are they
Jeff,
indifferent?
do you want to speak to the budget element? Okay.
Tyler does have a budget module. I took some training on that. What we've decided to do is run parallel processes in Tyler budgeting and our regular process.
Which
Just-
is Old
With
Spring?
Excel spreadsheets using the
Okay,
iBailey presentation model. Remember the last
Okay.
time they both built that, which was based on our Excel spreadsheets. So we're going to run both processes and see what is the best way to do so.
This will be your first budget building one, right?
In Tyler, that
Yeah,
is correct.
Tyler, okay.
And so it's going to take a little bit more work, but I think it's well worth the investment because I can see if it's going to work or not. Because sometimes you have particular needs within your own reporting and your own budget building processes that they may or may not be able to address it. I can't speak to that because I had a 2-hour training and that's all they supply.
Gotcha.
Same thing with the forecasting for salaries and benefits. We have used GovInvest in the past to be able to do our salary and benefits building. Tyler has their own accounting program for that. Stacy's going to work parallel programs to see how that works out, because we want to make sure that we have accurate information.
Okay.
So Tyler is position budgeting. GovInvest, we already have the system set up. And again, we're going to run parallel paths to make sure that we have the ability to assess which is the best way to go.
How often do we have these problems arising? Is that on a daily basis? Are we talking about,
With Tyler.
with Tyler?
I can say that it's probably a mixture of Tyler's limitations and in some cases configuration. I mean, in going through the implementation recently for core financials and payroll, I can tell you that the product at the end of it was much better than the UB product. So I think a lot of it has to do with the team that you have implementing. I think a lot of it has to do with the team from Tyler that you have helping to configure. But I can tell you that with Tyler, and I'm sure many other software, offerings or software as a service offerings, you're going to have limitations. There's just limitations of the system. So it challenges an entity to have to look at maybe how they're running a process and either manipulate it slightly to make it fit within the system, or you figure out alternatives. I mean, that's really what it comes down to when you're implementing a software. So in this case, Encode, or what has now become ERP Pro 10 through Tyler, which is the module that we have, can tell you here is this module and here are its capabilities. And then we have to look at our internal processes and procedures and then, implement that and configure it accordingly. So I think with Tyler, what we're facing is, making sure that we are able to utilize the software, and you want to try to streamline operations by having the software do the work for you. But it does in turn challenge a lot of times status quo and what the organization has been doing possibly for many years. So that is another element of this implementation, is that we're having to go back in and, as an example, purchasing, right? Maybe we have processes or procedures in place for how we do purchasing here at the district. But based on what the system can do, we may have to go back in and take a look at changing things. And that could be procedural, that could be policy related. It's, you know,
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering if, like with purchasing and the changes, we have to adjust to what they can provide instead of us paying, you know, a lot more money to do it the way we want, because I would assume, and we know that's not good, but an accounting system should be able to have proper policies and procedures for purchasing built into
Right.
there.
right.
That's what we'd assume.
And with Tyler being a larger entity as well, you know, they have a lot of offerings, and I think I've spoken to this in the past, that you can make recommendations based on your individual agency's needs.
Mhm.
They don't have to accommodate
Right.
that. I think if they hear from other agencies that that is a desire or something that other agencies feel would be a benefit of the system, at that point, their engineering or development department will incorporate that into an update, a future update.
Yeah.
But all we can do is reach out to Tyler, try to maximize the system as best we can, and then communicate with them if there's anything else that we'd like to see in future releases.
Because timing becomes an issue, because whatever's, you know, whatever suggestion we have can be out there by itself. Everybody else says, "Oh, no, we don't need it." So guess what?
Right.
Not going to happen.
And there's not a lot of, you can't ask for specifics. They don't make the system to be able to say, okay, CCWD, you do this differently. We're going to now manipulate the system to make it do what you need it to do. So there's, I think, a lot more flexibility needed on the end user side than there is on the actual
Right.
entities, you know,
Yeah.
the software side. So it's a challenge. It really is a challenge. And I think, you know, we've had Springbrook, for many, many years, and Springbrook, and I certainly don't want to get in the weeds on this, but Springbrook was a much smaller company.
Yeah.
And so I certainly believe that there was probably the ability to manipulate things a little bit more, and Springbrook was an on-premise solution. I can't stress this enough. There is absolutely a difference between an on-premise hosted solution versus a cloud solution. In most of those cases, even though this is cloud-based and it moves quicker and it's more secure, you don't have the ability to manipulate the software.
And so, Mike, what would you have preferred, hosting or iCloud? If you had to do anything and money wasn't an issue, what would you choose?
I can tell you that most software as a service entities now are only offering cloud-based solutions. They are not.
That wasn't my
offering
question.
on-prem.
If
Sorry.
you had an option
Oh,
of
on-prem,
either on site.
on site.
And that's what I had
100%.
kind of said too, this iCloud stuff.
Right.
How many modules are we using currently?
So, well, I don't have an exact number, but I do know that we're using at least a handful of modules for core financials, bank recon, accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing, fixed assets, budget. We did have a module.
There's a
that-
module for every one of those. On
Yeah.
your next update, could you list all those modules
Sure.
that we have? I'm just kind of curious. And
Sure.
then the next thing, we've purchased all these. And so going forward, we only have to do annual contracts, which gives us support. We don't have to buy something or pay for new updates, right? That's what that
Right.
license is all about.
Right. So there's absolutely a difference between one-time implementation charges, which we saw in this budget year. And then there's the ongoing annual software as a service cost, which is per the contract that we have with Tyler.
Yeah.
And that's what they charge us to utilize the different modules that we have purchased.
Yeah.
That's for.
I'd like to see that again, if you have time, if
Okay.
not next meeting, the other one. The annual cost for all modules that we're using, the list of the modules, and again, what was the total implementation purchase from when we started, and what year was that? 2019?
So I am actually going to just briefly discuss that here in
Okay.
a moment. As a part of the project management process, one of the elements that I've been trying to follow very closely, because I obviously do believe in it, as we do this with any project that we undertake, is reconciling our internal budgeted costs for implementation versus what we actually pay. So I am working with Tyler right now as we're coming out of, post-project implementation phase, if you will, what billable hours we've been charged and any change orders that came as a result of the process versus what we originally
Nice.
budgeted. And then also Tyler provides from their side, what we should have been billed. And so I'm looking now and comparing between what we were billed and what Tyler stated we should have been billed for.
Yeah,
our
but with
original
that right there,
contract.
that's a selling thing. I don't care what they should have charged us. I want to know what we paid and what we budgeted.
Well, and that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking for
Yeah.
original budget, original contract budget versus what we were billed.
Yes.
And
That's-
so I'm working with Tyler right now because I need to make sure that there aren't any discrepancies.
Yeah.
In that billing. So I'm working on that right now with Tyler. We have a number of modules, so several modules that we're using on the payroll or HR side as well. And so we went live with the bulk of core financials back in November, and it did kind of spill over a little bit into January 2025 with, like I said, the ancillary or additional smaller modules. But on the payroll side and the HR side, they implemented payroll. We've run several payrolls out of Tyler now. The feedback I get from the HR department that the payroll process itself is actually better than when it was run through ADP. I don't want to get in the weeds on this because I do believe obviously Stacy's more of the subject matter expert on the payroll side than I am by any means. But I do know that, again, like we were kind of talking about before, when you move over into a new system, there were a lot of things that ADP was handling on the back end, being kind of an all-inclusive payroll company, that now we are having to evaluate on the CCWD end because these processes that ADP handled on the back end now fall onto our plate. to
So
handle.
like we're talking quarterly payroll.
We're talking about
reporting
payroll
to
taxes,
pensions.
we're talking
And
about,
that was not discussed before you guys went with Tyler? Because that's a huge benefit, having somebody do all that for you.
it
So now you
is,
Guys, hopefully you'll just be able to do the reporting yourself and print up the quarterlies and whatnot.
right, but there's still an element of reconciliation that needs to happen, whether we're doing it or an outside entity is doing it. And I think we have a lot more, at least on the payroll side, control over configuration of how payroll's done and reconciliation of those transactions versus ADP. And, you know, again, I don't want to get in the weeds. I know Stacy would be able to speak to this a lot more in detail than I would, but the employee self-service side of it, which is where our staff will now go in to enter their time, their attendance, you know, request time off, all of those things. That's in the process of being launched. And it's going to create the ability to have everything connected directly to the payroll process itself, which is then connected directly to our GL. There's not the journal entries that we've seen in years past required by our accounting staff when we were running everything through ADP, because it was an isolated
Yeah, I'm
software.
familiar, yeah, with what
Mhm.
those are. Maybe Stacy could be here when she's ready and she could fill us in on how the payroll side
Sure.
goes. I'm just curious about who's doing the quarterly filings. They should be done online. You know what I
Right.
mean? But is that
But these are the.
Tyler have that, or now somebody internally has to do it? Do you know?
We'll be we are having these talks right now about how the process has changed from how it was built within ADP and how it's run within Tyler now. So for example, we have post payroll processes where we have monthly things that need to be paid. And then we've got quarterly. And so we have packets that are created within the system that allow for our finance department to be able to process these payments. Which is not unlike what we were doing before. There were certain elements, things that we had to pay out of finance that were not taken care of by ADP. But there are a couple elements that were handled by ADP that we'll now have to handle internally. And so we're having those talks about what that looks like to make sure that there's separation of duties and checks and balances along the process. So we are having those talks right now. I did speak to reconciliation against our records for budget, which is something that I'll be able to report out on within the next few finance committee meetings. And then as we work on training and reporting, so post go live training, we'll continue for staff. There's reporting elements that we're trying to dial in, and then looking at process and procedure evaluation, making configuration tweaks as we move forward. The next phase is the UB side. So this has been a long time coming. We wanted to make sure that the GL and really the backbone of the system was put into place before we took a look at the UB side. And one thing that I don't think a lot of people really realize is how complex UB processes truly are. And the fact that if they are not configured appropriately, they can absolutely wreak havoc on the GL. So this is providing us an opportunity to, again, work with Tyler and sit down and take a look at the UB side, and then obviously work with our finance staff to make sure that the elements that we're correcting and building on the UB front end to make sure that we're using the system to our benefit is going to speak correctly to the GL on their end. So it's going to be another collaborative effort, and we're embarking on that, like I said, within the March timeframe to kick that off.
Within March. Good.
Yes,
That's soon. All right.
that is all I have. for
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Bertha, any questions?
Thank you. No.
Wait, any public comment, questions? Don't go away, Cal.
What is UB or UB?
I was gonna say something.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, acronyms, at least say it once.
And
Utility.
I try to be so good about that. Utility billing, UB. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I
you kept saying it. I knew what it was, and just before you
Yeah,
came up, I think.
My apologies, utility billing. So the utility billing side
Yes.
is what we will be reevaluating coming March. Yes.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, anybody online who wants to say anything? All right. Well, we are moving along now. All right, thank you again, Kelly. So item number 4, Director of Administrative Services comments. Jeffrey?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to keep this short because you've listened to me talk enough. The only thing I wanted to wrap up with is discussion of the audit for fiscal year
Oh, okay.
23-24. We are winding down, keeping fingers crossed. However, there's a couple outstanding items we're still working on. The biggest one is the new GASB requirements, GASB 94, and this has to do with our relationship with NCPA and MID.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to require additional reporting by the auditors. Again, it's all new, but we're moving ahead.
Okay. You'll finish just in time to start the other one.
There we go. And speaking of which, we are going to be issuing a request for proposal, an RFP for audit services. It should go out sometime this week.
Is it, you have to do that?
We need to do that. We've used Richardson and
All the
Company for
people.
a number of years.
Okay.
Part of that was through COVID and all this. So it is now time to send out an
Just updated and
RFP
stuff. Cool.
to find the best fit possible.
Cool. All right, Bertha,
No.
any questions in public from Mike or Jeffrey online? Okay,
That's
thanks.
all.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, Michael, are you still with us for general manager comments?
Guess who's gone?
No, he's
Still-
done. Hi, Michael. Do you have any comments for GM?
trying to unmute. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
You're good. Yes.
Sorry about that. No, you heard from me last week and you'll hear from me next week again. So you probably let,
We're good.
we can wait. Yeah.
We
But just
skated
thanks,
through.
thank you to staff. That was a lot of information, a lot of questions, good discussion. So thank you, everybody. Well,
All right, Michael, thank you. All right, 6, director comments and future agenda items. Bertha, for you, you're good. The only thing I want to say would be, thank you for coming in person. It's nice to see your faces instead of up there. That's everybody. And then, also, make sure we bring the AR. Okay? So, the next committee meeting will be, Tuesday, March 18th at 1 o'clock here in this room. And if there's nothing else, we will adjourn. Good? Good. All right, the time is 3 something, 3:26. All right, thanks, everybody.